Our Story Production presents The Road to Our Story, spotlighting an in-depth look at many of The Road to Our Story magazine's featured articles. So get ready, for you're about to travel on The Road to Our Story.
Hello, I'm Jason Howland, and welcome to Speaking of Health, a place to help you learn how to live a longer and healthier life. March is Colon Cancer Awareness Month. It's a disease that can be fatal, but it is also a disease that in many cases, if found early, can be treated and possibly even prevented. Joining us today is Dr. David Brokel. He is a gastroenterologist from Mayo Clinic Health System. Dr. Brokel, thanks for joining us today on Speaking of Health.
Hi, thank you for inviting me, Jason. Glad to be here.
Well, for folks that don't know, can you share with our viewers a quick synopsis of the medical specialty of gastroenterology and what exactly you help patients with?
Sure. A gastroenterologist is a medical doctor that specializes in the branch of medicine that deals with the digestive system. The digestive system you can think of as including the long tube through which food goes through the body, which includes the esophagus or the food pipe, the stomach, the small intestine, the colon, otherwise known as the large intestine, and the rectum, as well as several organs that are connected to that tube, including the pancreas, liver, biliary system, and the gallbladder.
Well, today we're talking about colon cancer, colorectal cancer. What exactly is the colon, and how common is it to get colon cancer?
The colon is sort of the tail end of that long tube through which the remnants of the food that you eat flow through. Now, colon cancer, or more appropriately colorectal cancer, is cancer that arises usually from the inside lining of the colon or the rectum. It's unfortunately a very common disease. Approximately 150,000 people in the United States are diagnosed with colon or rectal cancer on an annual basis. And of those 150,000 folks, 50,000 end up dying from the disease on a yearly basis on average.
Do most cases start as something other than cancer then?
Absolutely. So the vast majority of colon cancers or rectal cancers start off with a precursor lesion known as a colon polyp. A colon polyp can be thought of as an abnormal growth on the inside lining of the colon or the rectum, kind of the same way that you can think of a mole or a wart on the surface of the skin. Oftentimes these polyps show up as little bumps or they show up as little mushroom-shaped lesions, but some of them can be very flat and difficult to detect. But the bottom line is that these are the precursor lesions to the vast majority of colon cancer. So it stands to reason if we can do a test that can detect these lesions and remove them, we can essentially prevent colon cancer in the vast majority of cases.
And that test to determine if those polyps are there and to remove them is?
Well, this gets into screening for colon cancer. So it's important to talk about what a screening procedure is first. A screening procedure is a test that's done on folks who are feeling perfectly fine, who are healthy, who feel well, who don't necessarily have any medical problems. And it's used to detect a disease in the very early stages before it's turned into a problem. So in terms of screening for colon cancer, the most commonly used test in the United States is a colonoscopy. And the purpose of the colonoscopy is to essentially look inside the colon, look for these precursor lesions, aka polyps, and to remove them before they have a chance to turn into cancer. And that's really the benefit of a colonoscopy as opposed to other screening tests for colon cancer. The colonoscopy is able to detect these lesions and to remove them while you're in there, as opposed to some of the other screening procedures which basically only detect these lesions but don't remove them.
So what happens in a colonoscopy for folks that may be a little intimidated by having a procedure like that done? Isn't it an intimidating procedure at all?
It really isn't. I think colonoscopies have gotten a bad rap over the years. Just to describe essentially what happens during the process of preparing for a colonoscopy and doing a colonoscopy, the process really begins about a day before the procedure. So let me just, as an example, let's say you have a colonoscopy scheduled for Friday at noontime. So when you get up in the morning on Thursday, the day before, you essentially put yourself on a clear liquid diet. So you still eat food, you get your nutrients, but the food is all liquid. So it's water, juices, broth, things like that. And you stay on a clear liquid diet the entire day. The purpose of this is to help rid the colon of any solid material that's in there. And then Thursday evening, the evening before the procedure, your physician will usually prescribe a bowel prep. A bowel prep is a gentle laxative that you take in two parts. You usually take the first part of it the evening before the procedure, and you take the second part oftentimes early the morning of the procedure, roughly about 5 to 6 hours before your procedure is scheduled. So in the case of a colonoscopy scheduled for Friday at noontime, you would take that second half of the bowel prep roughly at around 6 a.m. in the morning. You would then show up to the facility where your colonoscopy is being done, and the nurses would put an IV in, and the IV is used to sedate a person for the procedure. The colonoscopies are done under what's called moderate sedation, which means that you are pretty much asleep during the procedure. It's not general anesthesia. It's not that heavy sedation. It's sort of like a twilight sedation, if you will. It's what a lot of people call it. But essentially, that keeps you comfortable during the procedure. The procedure itself actually entails taking a long, slender tube called a colonoscope that has a camera on the tip of it. The tube is about as thick as my thumb. It's a fairly slender tube. And once you're asleep, the tube is gently inserted and guided up to the very top of the colon, or the beginning of the colon, called the cecum. And on the way out is when we do all of our looking and polyp resections, if there are any polyps to be resected, biopsies, and so forth. Any biopsies or polyp resections that are done, you will not feel during the procedure. It's a painless procedure from that standpoint. The whole procedure lasts maybe 20 minutes to an hour, depending on how much work needs to be done while you're in there. And then after the procedure is done, you go to the recovery unit. The nurses watch you for about half an hour or so, make sure everything is okay, and then you leave the facility.
Does someone need to feel sick or have symptoms before having a colonoscopy done?
Absolutely not. And that's a critical distinction between a screening test versus a diagnostic test. Screening tests are tests that we do, like looking for colon cancer, colon polyps, on folks who feel perfectly healthy, who are healthy, and who have no symptoms. And the reason why we do this is because a lot of these diseases, like colon cancer in their early stages, particularly when they're in the polyp form, or even when there is cancer present, but it's in its early stages, most patients don't have any symptoms from this whatsoever. They feel perfectly fine. And so a screening test is done to detect these sorts of problems early in the course so that something can be done about them before it's too late.
And what are the general recommendations for age when you should come in and get your screening?
The risk of colon cancer and colon polyps starts to increase in anyone starting at around the age of 50. Folks who have a family history of colon cancer oftentimes might need to start screening for colon cancer a little bit early, and these are questions that would be answered by your local physician. Folks who have certain diseases of the bowel, including inflammatory bowel disease, might need to start a little bit earlier. But in general, somebody who doesn't have a family history or risk factors that puts them at higher risk than the average person for colon cancer, generally the recommendations are to start screening for colon cancer at age 50.
And then once you've had that screening, how long of a time period is it before you have to have another screening done?
That really depends on a multitude of factors. If you have no family history or no other significant risk factors for getting colon cancer, and you have your first screening colonoscopy, and no precancerous polyps are found, generally speaking, the next colonoscopy to look for colon cancer or colon polyps would be done 10 years later. Now, if any precancerous polyps are found, if you have a family history of colon cancer, if you have other risk factors that put you at a higher risk for developing colon cancer, that interval might narrow a little bit.
So I know that you said in its early stages, colon cancer, typically there aren't any symptoms. But what are some symptoms of colon cancer? What could possibly be?
The symptoms of colon cancer oftentimes are nonspecific, and unfortunately, they tend to occur in cancers that are in the later stages when they're advanced. So some of the symptoms could be very subtle and could include simple change in bowel habits. So if you normally have a solid bowel movement on a daily basis, some patients might start to get constipated. Some patients might develop some watery stool. Oftentimes blood in the stool is a first sign of colon cancer. Now there are many other things that can cause these symptoms. It's important to recognize that, so this is not to scare anyone. But these are some of the subtle symptoms that can occur in colon in somebody who has colon cancer. Some of the other things might include anemia, which might be detected on routine blood work that your physician does, just feeling poorly, unintentional weight loss. There's several other things that can go along with that. And generally, we don't get too worried about colon cancer unless somebody's never had a screening colonoscopy, is above the age of 50, and these symptoms are lasting longer than just a couple of days.
Who's at more risk of getting colon cancer?
Well, the risk factors for colon cancer are several-fold. Probably the most important risk factor is simply age. So the older you get, particularly beyond the age of 50, the more likely you are to develop colon cancer if you've never had a screening colonoscopy done before. So age is really the most important risk factor. Family history is another important risk factor. If you have several family members who've had colon cancer, particularly if they're first-degree relatives, like a mother, father, brother, sister, and especially if those folks develop colon cancer at an early age, before the age of 50 or 60, that puts you at increased risk for developing colon cancer. Some of the other things that increase risk for colon cancer include certain diseases of the bowel, particularly inflammatory bowel disease like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. It turns out that African Americans are at a slightly higher risk than other folks for developing colon cancer. So some of the gastrointestinal societies recommend that they start screening for colon cancer at around age 45 instead of age 50. And then there are other sort of lifestyle things that have been linked to an increased risk for colon cancer, including moderate to heavy alcohol use on a regular basis. So smoking, there's so many things that smoking is linked to that's bad. Colon cancer and colon polyps is just another thing on that list. So smoking cessation would help reduce your risk. A sedentary lifestyle, or not exercising enough, or being obese, are also risk factors for colon cancer. So simply including some exercise during the day and trying to do what you can to keep yourself at a healthy weight might reduce your risk.
So a patient's had a colonoscopy and you found some polyps and you've removed them. What are the chances that those polyps will grow back or that they may get other polyps?
Generally speaking, if we find a polyp, and we're talking about now precancerous polyps, because it's important to know there are other kinds of colon polyps that can be found that are benign. But if any precancerous polyps are found and they are removed in their entirety, those polyps generally don't grow back. The problem is that folks who tend to have polyps found in their first colonoscopy will be folks who tend to grow new polyps in the future. And so that's why we would recommend repeating a colonoscopy, maybe not at 10 years, but a little bit earlier in folks whom we find polyps on, which is an indication that they tend to grow precancerous polyps. And the whole point is to tailor the frequency of the colonoscopies to keep up with that polyp growth so that these polyps never have a chance to turn into cancer.
One of the amazing things about a colonoscopy is that it's a procedure that really can help prevent cancer. You can't say that with all forms of cancer, but in this case, you can actually save people's lives just by having them come in and get screened.
Absolutely. So important to realize that the vast majority of colon cancers start off as precancerous colon polyps, number one. Number two, it's important to get screened. Studies show that up to 50% of Americans who are eligible and who should undergo screening for colon cancer either don't undergo it either because they decide not to do it or because it's never offered to them by their physician. So it's important to bring that up with your local physician. If you're not sure whether it's appropriate for you to get screened, ask. Your physician should be able to answer that question.
Because this is a disease that you can prevent just by coming
in
and having the procedure done.
Absolutely. By having the procedure done, you can prevent colon cancer by removing these precancerous colon polyps. And even in that bad scenario where we find colon cancer, if we find it early, we can oftentimes remove the cancer and, in effect, get a cure.
All right, so some last bits of advice for folks as far as what they can do to help prevent colon cancer, besides obviously the screenings, but are there things that they can do in their lives to maybe help prevent that?
Number one, we mentioned talking about getting screened. Number two, we talked about some of the risk factors. The risk factors for colon cancer include smoking. So if you smoke, do what you can to quit smoking. Smoking has been linked to not just colon cancer, but a ton of other cancers and other diseases. So smoking is an important risk factor to eliminate. Using alcohol in moderation. Again, these are folks who are at risk for colon cancer tend to be moderate to heavy users of alcohol. So it's not that you can't use any alcohol, it's just you should use it in moderation. Maintaining a healthy weight. If you're overweight or obese, try to lose some weight and get into the healthy weight range, and your local physician can help you with that. Introducing activity or exercise in your daily routine, getting 30 minutes of exercise 5 days a week. also helps prevent colon cancer. And eating a healthy diet, and specifically eating a diet that's low in saturated fats and low in red meats. Now, this doesn't mean you can't eat red meats. It just means you can't eat too much of it, in moderation.
All right, fantastic. Well, unfortunately, we're all out of time, but I'd like to thank our guest today, Dr. David Brokel, for joining us on Speaking of Health. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me, Jason.
Have a great day, everyone, and be healthy.
There you have it, folks. One of the favorite stories ripped from the pages of The Road to Our Story magazine. Let's have a look at another.
Live from Sweet Swine County, where every day is sweet, it's Split Hoof Tonight with Billy Gates and the Broken Windows Band. Hi, I'm Earl Silo, and now let's welcome Sweet Swine's one and only Cousin John.
Hey, thank you, folks. Thank you, and welcome. Hey, welcome to another great episode of Split Hoof Tonight. You know that I'm an avid golfer. The Golden Hogger is not with us tonight, but I'm an avid golfer. I'm about an average golfer, too. And I read that the average golfer walks about 900 miles a year. And in the same study, they found out that the average golfer drinks about 22 gallons of alcohol in a year. So I figured that out a little bit. Getting about 41 miles a gallon. I'm pretty proud of that. Kind of feel like a hybrid. Anyway, hey folks, stick around. We're going to be right back with a really good guest, but first we're going to run out and see what's going on outside Sweet Swine County. We'll be right back.
Hello, Sweet Swine County. This is your roving reporter, Clarice. Today, we're hidden away in the town of Tracy, Minnesota, in Lyon County. I'm visiting the Valentine Inn Bed and Breakfast, originally built in 1902. This home was originally built for the Tracy Railroad conductor. No expense was spared, since it was designed to entertain traveling dignitaries. In 1912, the house was converted into a hospital, and in 1919, Dr. Walter Valentine took over the hospital. In 1939, Dr. Valentine built a new hospital. Then, after the war, the house was turned into 6 apartments. It eventually sat empty for 6 years. In 1994, Sis Bierman purchased the empty house as a Christmas gift for her husband, Joe. Between Joe's skills as a contractor and Sis's skills as a decorator, they spent the next 2 years lovingly restoring the home to its original splendor. The large 3-story Victorian home with wraparound porch offers a master suite with 2 rooms, whirlpool bath, fireplace, and a walkout porch. There are another 3 private rooms, each with their own bathroom, air conditioning, and queen bed. A full breakfast is served in the dining room. Sis and Joe have hosted guests from around the world, including Canada and Australia. Since Japanese students are required to read Laura Ingalls Wilder books, and Walnut Grove is only 6 miles from Tracy, rooms are frequently filled with tourists from Japan. For more information about this beautifully restored home, now known as the Valentine Inn Bed and Breakfast, please contact them at 507-629-3827. From outside Sweet Swine County, this is Clarice. And as my Norwegian Nana would have said, hid away hardly means forgotten. Bye.
Hey, welcome back. Let's hear it again for Billy Gates and the Broken Windows Band. Say, Earl.
Yes, Cousin John?
Rumor around the water cooler has it that you showed up on one of our, or should I say my, competitor's show the other day. Said you were on the Women of Sweet Swine County?
Well, yeah. I did too. But they said too, the women, they said what a nice guy that you were, and how you're,
They're just sucking up because it's close to payday. Listen, that show's just nothing but a bunch of fluff and chat. We got to just watch that. But now,
I mentioned that too once, and
how'd that go over?
that
Not
that
well.
was not-
Well, let me ask you this then. Did you use up all your Earl Steps out on their show?
No, I didn't. Matter of fact, I've got one here now.
You got one for us?
I do.
Well,
I
let's see it then.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here's a little segment that I like to call
Earl Steps Out!
Have you ever watched that classic movie, Cousin John, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
Oh, yeah. Charlie gets the golden ticket.
That's
gets
right.
the yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That movie inspired David Kanoki to create his golden ticket bar.
Wow.
Now, David has operated a specialty chocolate shop for 10 years in Hudson, Wisconsin. Located about 20 miles east of the Twin Cities in the county of St. Croix.
Yeah, it's just across the river there. a
That's
little
right.
ways.
Kanoki's
Yeah.
Chocolates produces fresh, handcrafted chocolates meant to be savored.
Ooh, the only thing better than chocolate?
More
chocolate.
About 3 years ago, David decided to create a promotion to benefit Bridges for Youth with Disabilities. That nonprofit organization provides services in 3 counties in Wisconsin and 1 in Minnesota. Well, using the Willy Wonka movie theme, David developed his golden ticket bar promotion. David hides a golden ticket inside the wrappers of 5 of his milk chocolate bars, and customers purchase those milk chocolate bars hoping to find one of the golden tickets.
What do they get?
Well, that promotion runs annually beginning in the first week of January, and it lasts until the last prize has been awarded. Now, let me tell you that 100% of the sales go to the Bridges for Youth with Disabilities.
Wow.
Now, here comes the good part. Each of those 5 lucky winners receives a special prize, including a one-of-a-kind t-shirt and a gift card to Kanoki's Chocolates. More importantly, they get to spend a day with Dave learning that fine art of making handmade chocolates. And the chocolates that they create go home with the budding chocolatier.
Oh.
That's right. For additional information about their golden ticket bar and other chocolate and seasonal specialties, contact Kanoki's Chocolates at 715-381-9866.
They got one of them on their websites too?
That's right. Or you can check out their website at www.kanokischocolates.com.
Perfect.
Yep. And, I don't know if you noticed or not, but I brought along some of those wonderful golden ticket bars.
Ooh, where?
They're right.
Ooh, look at this.
And
Ooh, now that's a good looking drink.
get.
Well, there's one.
No, actually, I brought enough for everybody in the audience.
Oh, hey, now that just goes to show, folks, why this show is the hottest ticket in town.
So, folks, that's what I'm going to do.
Earl Steps Out!
Hey, great report, Earl. Hey, let me ask you this, though. From now on, Earl Steps Out only on Split Hoof tonight, okay?
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what? I promised you an exceptional guest, and let me tell you what, I am not going to disappoint tonight. So tonight, please join me in welcoming from the county of Wabasha, in the city of Wabasha, we have Jeff Worrell, and he is the executive director of the National Eagle Center. Let's welcome Jeff. I'm very good. Good to see you.
See you, Earl. How are
Please
you?
have a chair. Oh, hey, Jeff. Thanks for coming along. And who have we got here? Let's
Well,
introduce
this is Harriet. This is our most famous eagle at the Eagle Center. She's 29 years old.
29.
29 years old. She's famous. She's appeared all over the country. And I have to say, I think this is probably the highlight of her career. She's been on the Today Show.
Well, yeah.
She's been on the Tonight Show.
Small potatoes.
Colbert Report, the Bonnie Hunt Show. But this is by far, this is the tops.
Oh.
Doesn't get any better.
So tell us a little bit about now this isn't just any Eagle Center, folks. This is the National Eagle Center. So tell us a little bit
Sure.
about
Well, the National Eagle Center is America's Eagle destination. We are a repository for permanently injured eagles that have no place else to go. These birds could not survive in the wild. They're permanently injured. But you know, they've got a very important job that they can do, and that's get out and meet people, meet their adoring public. They are a nation symbol, so these birds travel to school groups and veterans hospitals. But you know, over 100,000 people come every year to the National Eagle Center.
Really?
Including over 8 people from 85 foreign countries.
That's amazing.
It is.
Now that's right there in Wabasha on the river there?
Right in Wabasha, we're right on the river, and people always ask, you know, you could have located the National Eagle Center anywhere you want. Why would you pick Wabasha, Minnesota?
I know.
What do you think?
It's because of the cliffs overlooking open water. It fits their nesting areas, and there's always food around 12 months out of the year.
Exactly. Boy, you do your homework. You know your stuff. We're very unique. We got big old Lake Pepin just to the north of us, and it pinches back down. And so when it reforms the Mississippi River, so we have all this open water because we have such a quick current right outside our doors.
Right.
Open water, lots of fish, means lots of eagles.
Well, what can a person expect if they come over, you know, to the center and want to visit? What can they expect to see?
Well, for one thing that we want everybody to be able to experience is just what we're experiencing right now, this up-close personal experience with an eagle. You know, we don't have any bars or cages at the center. We bring the birds right out with the public, and we want you to be able to get up close and personal, what we call our nose-to-beak experience.
Wow.
Now,
Okay.
you know, Earl, she's looking at you kind of intensely. I'm thinking that, you know, she hasn't had her lunch yet. You wouldn't happen to have any fish or anything laying about, would you?
Well, I do have a little container
I
down
mean,
here.
look at that. She's eyeballing you to beat the band over there. Is that your lunch?
No,
Do you mind?
no.
Oh, okay.
Not my. Yeah, go ahead. Better
Looks
this
like
than me.
She's a fan of sushi, maybe.
See her, well, this must be left over because she doesn't seem too excited by it. Well, now it's on her feet. Maybe she'll be interested. You want that bee, sweetheart? No, this must not be her her particular
Earl,
species.
Earl, you ruined her appetite there. So what can you tell us about how do the eagles end up at your center?
Sure. Well, most eagles come to us, you know, they present themselves a variety of different ways. And typically we get injured birds, birds that have been hit by cars, and lead poisoning is still an issue for these magnificent eagles that are out there. But they go into veterinary care, and from there they're usually evaluated. If there's any chance that these birds can be released, we work very hard to do so. The ones that can't be released, we take or we help find a home for.
So now how did Harriet end up with you guys?
Well, Harriet, actually, we're very fortunate with her. She was banded at the nest way back in 1981. 18 years later, after a pretty full life out there, she was hit by a car.
Oh my.
She has half a wing. This wing here, her left wing was amputated, and you might notice some tuft of hairs up on her head.
Oh sure.
That's not the latest hairstyle in Wabasha. That's some leftovers from the injury from the car accident that she had.
Oh okay.
So she came to us as a full-on adult, probably had lots of babies over her years, and has adapted incredibly well to being in captivity.
There's other eagles other than Harriet?
We have 6 eagles in total. We have 5 bald eagles and 1 golden eagle. A lot of people don't know that both Minnesota and Wisconsin here are blessed with a wonderful, healthy population of golden eagles as well that come all the way out of the Arctic to spend their summers in the night, or their winters rather, in the nice, temperate, warm winter climate of Minnesota.
I saw something in the news about the National Eagle Center. What's been happening there lately?
Well, we're just in the, speaking of golden eagles, we're in the news because we have been on a research project on golden eagles, trying to understand where they go in the summer, where they're coming in the winter, what they're doing, what they're eating. And for the first time in the history of Minnesota, as far as we know, a golden eagle was trapped by our research team and outfitted with a GPS-enabled backpack. Now, this is solar-powered and global positioning satellites. Remarkable technology. They last for 7 years, and we can track these birds anywhere on the globe that they may
that's
go.
Awesome. Jeff, let me tell you what, I'm proud to have Harriet here with us, and we are really, really glad that you brought her along to share her with us. And Earl, God, that's about going to do it.
I think that's
Billy,
gonna wrap it
take us out of here. Good night, everybody.